afternoon. Today our topic is genital tuberculosis. So the word tuberculosis was coined by John Lucas Scholen in 1834. It was discovered by Robert Koch in 1882, and the first case of genital tuberculosis was demonstrated in 1744 by Morgagni in an autopsy specimen where he could find enormous caseous material in uterine cavity and fallopian tubes. And the first case of TB endometritis was demonstrated by Swish, and TB ovary by Spencer Wales, fallopian tube by Higar, and endometrial biopsy for TB was studied by Sutherland, and TB cervicitis was demonstrated by Raymond. The global incidence of tuberculosis is 8.6 million. In India, it is 2.2 million. That is 26% of the total global cases. Co-infection with HIV is more, and the most common form of extragenital tuberculosis is peripheral lymphadenopathy, and the second most common is genital tuberculosis, in which female genital tuberculosis is more common than male genital TB. Genital TB in India is 30% of all the extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So what is pathophysiology? It is caused by a non-motile organism which is obligate aerobe, so it resides in lungs. Replicates every 17 to 24 hours, which is very slow compared to other bacteria. It is non-encapsulated and acid-fast bacillus. It has an outer lipid coating, and it is 90 to 95% of the cases are because of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. 5 to 10% are by Mycobacterium bovis. Less than 1% are by atypical mycobacteria. The age group, it can affect any age group, but the most common age group affected is the reproductive age, that is 20 to 45 years, and it may also affect the postmenopausal women, that is 7 to 11%. If primary infection occurs in menarche, there are increased chances of genital tuberculosis. Primary infection of the genital organs is rare. If at all it infects the sites are vulva and the cervix. The mode of spread is hematogenous, that is from the lungs, or by disseminated tuberculosis, or by lymphatic spread, that is from the adjacent pelvic organs, or it might be from the direct spread, that is from peritoneum, pelvis, urinary system, and lumbar system. And primary infection may also occur by direct spread to the vulva, vagina, and the cervix. If not treated properly, reactivation of the virus may occur in immunocompromised states. So the frequency with which the organs are involved is fallopian tube is the worst affected in genital tuberculosis. That is almost always it is involved. That is 90 to 100%. It is mostly bilateral. Endometrium, 50 to 60% of the cases endometrium is involved. Ovaries are 20 to 30%. Cervix, vulva, and vagina are least to be affected. So, what is the pathophysiology of tuberculosis of fallopian tube? Usually, there is bilateral involvement because hematogenous spread is the most common spread. So, there is bilateral involvement of fallopian tubes. Submucous layer of the ampulla is involved. So, if it spreads to the muscle layer of the fallopian tube, there will be fibrosis and segmental thickening of the tube. Which results in tobacco pouch appearance. This tobacco pouch appearance could be seen on laparoscopy. We'll see the images later. And it may result in pyosalpinx and salpingitis cystica nodosa. And if it spreads outwards outside the serosa of the fallopian tube, it may result in perisalpingitis with exudation and dense adhesions. And it may also result in tubo-ovarian abscess or mass. So this is the tobacco pouch appearance, and in tobacco pouch appearance, this is the ampulla. Ampulla part of the fallopian tube is the most affected, and the fimbria are the least affected, and isthmus is also not affected. So the ampulla is dilated with the indrawing of the fimbriae, which results in appearance of tobacco pouch. We'll see how tobacco pouch looks like. And this is salpingitis isthmica nodosa, in which there is segmental thickening and the thickening of the muzzle layer of the fallopian tube, which gives rod-like appearance, and this is salpingitis isthmica nodosa. So what are types of TB salpingitis? They are exudative and productive. Exudative occurs in acute phase, and it may result in pyosalpinx and few adhesions. The productive type or the adhesive type, the fallopian tubes are studded with multiple tubercles. Here we can see multiple tubercles, which are densely adherent to the surrounding organs. So it is called as adhesive type to surrounding organs, and the tube wall is thick and nodular during healing, and it results in calcification and fibrosis. So in exudative type, there is exudation of the fluid into the fallopian tube, cavity of the fallopian tube, which results in pyosalpinx. And as the serosa is least involved, there are very less amount of adhesions. Whereas in productive or adhesive type, there is exudation and there is dense adhesion formation because tubercles reside upon the surface of the fallopian tube, which may ulcerate and which may further cause inflammatory reaction. So in tuberculosis of the endometrium, as endometrium is shed during each menstrual cycle, the endometrium is least involved, but the basal layer of the endometrium is not shed along with each menstruation. So TB tubercles remain within the basal layer of the endometrium, and reinfection can occur. During reinfection, endometrial ulceration may occur, which in turn results in thick endometrial adhesions. These endometrial adhesions, if they are very thick, they result in Asherman syndrome. So TB of the basal layer of endometrium, if myometrium is involved, that is from basal layer of the endometrium, if it spreads outwards, the myometrium is involved, and there will be caseation and the pyometra formation. Pyometra usually occurs in postmenopausal women since endometrium is not shared with each cycle. In tuberculosis of the ovary, TB ovary, there is usually bilateral involvement as is seen in fallopian tubes, and there are two types of pathologies occur here: periophoritis or oophoриtis. In periophoritis, the spread is from the hematogenous spread. Spread is direct spread from the fallopian tubes, and it is affected from outside to inside, that is from cortex towards the stroma. And as outer side is affected, it may result in adhesions and tubo-ovarian mass. Dense adhesions may be present, and as we see, this is the most common form since fallopian tubes are the most commonly affected, and which in turn may cause direct spread to the ovary. Here we can see tubo-ovarian abscess or mass formations. In oophoриtis, it is because of hematogenous spread, that is secondary to pulmonary tuberculosis, and the infection, since it is hematogenous, stroma is most vascular structure, so it occurs from inside to out, that is from stroma towards the cortex. On histopathological examination of the ovary, that is on cut section, we can see typical tubercles and large foci with caseous centers. So in tuberculosis of the cervix, the source might be because of descending infection from the endometrium, or that is endometrium or the fallopian tubes through lymphatic spread, or from direct spread from the partners. It may present as three forms, that is ulcerative or papillomatous growth, or it may present as miliary tubercles as is seen on the fallopian tube. So, but ulcerative is the most common form. So here we can see the ulcerations formed upon the cervix, which could be seen on speculum examination. In tuberculous peritonitis, as we have discussed, the peritoneum covering the uterus is also included in the female genital tract. So it is associated with female genital tuberculosis in 45% of the cases. TB peritonitis may be of serous variety or plastic variety, but serous variety is most common. It may result in ascites and peritoneal inflammation. There might be general symptoms like fever, anorexia, abdominal pain, and weight loss. In plastic variety, this is less common, that is plastic. As we can see, there will be dense adhesion formation will be present in plastic variety, and there will be a tender abdominal mass which gives doughy feel on palpation. So doughy feel on palpation is more towards TB peritonitis. So tuberculosis of vulva and vagina. It is rare in 1% of it is 1% of genital tuberculosis, and the source is partner, that is from direct spread. Vulva, a nodule may appear upon the labia or vestibule of the vulva, which may break open, and it may cause irregular ragged ulcer. As we can see in the picture, there might be irregular ragged ulcer, or the tubercle may break and may form a sinus discharging caseous material or pus, or it may appear as hypertrophic irregular warty growth. In vagina, there might be ulcerative or papillomatous growth, which may simulate that of vaginal carcinoma. In tuberculosis of TB of pelvis, frozen pelvis may be present. In frozen pelvis is like dense adhesions are present within the organs of pelvic organs, whereby opening is very difficult and there are very thick dense adhesions are present. So what are the clinical features? In clinical features, family history might be present in 20% of the cases. Past history, that is, they might have undergone TB treatment, and 10 to 11% are asymptomatic. As we know, what are the systemic symptoms? That is poor general condition, weight loss, fatigue, low-grade fever, vague lower abdominal pain, unexplained ascites, non-healing wounds, night sweats may be present. And according to gynecological symptoms are, she may present with infertility being the most common symptom. Menstrual disturbances are the third most common, and there might be abdominal pain and vague abdominal pain and abdominal swelling, which becomes the second most common symptom. There might be postcoital bleeding because of ulcerations upon the cervix. There might be foul smelling vaginal discharge because it may present as pyometra, and dyspareunia may be present because of dense adhesions within the abdominal cavity, which may result in deep dyspareunia. There might be recurrent PIDs, pelvic inflammatory diseases, because of secondary pyogenic infections. So infertility is the most common symptom because the fallopian tube is the most common to be affected. Infertility becomes the most common symptom. There might be other causes like secondary ovarian failure may be present because if ovary is involved, and because endometrium will also be not receptive, so infertility may occur. Lower abdominal pain. Lower abdominal pain, there will be vague abdominal pain. It is the second most common symptom. It is present for several months and it is associated with the swelling of the abdomen, which gives doughy feel and palpation, associated with acute episodes because of secondary infections like appendicitis, etc., or because of chronic and acute PIDs. In advanced disease, there will be severe pain, dysmenorrhea, and dyspareunia. What are the menstrual complaints? All varieties of menstrual complaints could be seen in tuberculosis, and this is the third most common symptom. Those are menorrhagia, menometrasia, or intermenstrual bleeding. That is increased blood, increased loss of blood. This is because of hyperemia. In initial stages, because of infection, there is increased vascular supply to the uterus, which may result in menorrhagia, menometrasia, and intermenstrual bleeding. Oligomenorrhea. Oligomenorrhea can occur because the uterus gradually becomes atrophic because of endometrial shedding and scarring of the myometrium. It becomes gradually atrophic, and it may result in oligomenorrhea. There might be postmenopausal bleeding. Postmenopausal bleeding because there might be there are ulcerations upon the cervix, which may result in post PMB. So amenorrhea may also occur. Amenorrhea occurs might be because of poor general condition in advanced tuberculosis or because of endometrial caseation and secondary ovarian failure. So primary ovarian failure. What are the signs? Signs are usually absent in 50% of the cases. On abdominal examination, we may feel ascites might be present, which gives a doughy feel, and there might be abdominal tenderness and abdominal mass might be present. On pelvic examination, there might be abnormal vaginal discharge. Abnormal vaginal discharge is discharge because endometrial cavity is filled with caseous material, which may give abnormal vaginal discharge. There might be pelvic mass or adnexal mass. Pelvic mass because of pus accumulating in the pouch of Douglas, etc. Or there might be adnexal mass, that is tubo-ovarian mass might be present, and the lesions on the vulva, that is ulceration may be present, or sinuses may be present. On vagina, there might be hypertrophic growth, and in the cervix, there might be ulcerations, papillomatous growth might be present. So pain, according to the symptom, pain and adnexal mass should be differentiated. This slide is very important because this is useful for you to answer chronic pelvic pain, because the etiology of chronic pelvic pain is also covered here. So pain and adnexal mass, that is we should differentiate from acute or chronic PID, ectopic pregnancy, endometriosis, ovarian carcinoma, and appendicitis. Granulomatous lesions in the pelvis. So what are the other causes of granulomatous lesions? That is syphilis, actinomycosis, filariasis, Crohn's disease, schistosomiasis, silicosis, brucellosis, leprosy, and histoplasmosis. So, what is ulcerative or hypertrophic lesions should be differentiated on how these occur in vulva and vagina. These should be differentiated from warts, vaginal cyst, condyloma accumulata, and condyloma lata, Bartholin abscess, and CA of vulva and vagina. So pelvic and adnexal mass may present as chronic pelvic pain, and granulomatous lesions in the pelvis may also present as CPP. So according to the site of involvement, it should be different. Other differential diagnoses are TB salpingitis. It should be differentiated with chronic and acute PID, ectopic pregnancy, ovarian cyst, endometriosis, CF colon, diverticulosis. And endometrial tuberculosis should be differentiated from dysfunctional DUB and endometrial carcinoma, ovarian tuberculosis from ovarian malignancies, cervical tuberculosis from CS cervix, and vulval tuberculosis from elephantiasis vulva caused by filariasis. So what are the diagnostic criteria? Though several kinds of tests are available, there is no one test which could definitely give which is most sensitive. So, these must be dealt in correlation. Clinical suspicion, laboratory evidence, HPE, histopathological confirmation, imaging, and vulval and visual evidence of laparoscopy or laparotomy or hysteroscopy should be done. So, what are the factors which raise clinical suspicion? Infertility with history of pulmonary tuberculosis or contact with a contact or recent travel to high prevalence areas or low socioeconomic status or residing at high prevalence areas and HIV positive status. And unexplained infertility, adnexal disease due to ascites in virgins, and chronic PID refractory to treatment, postmenopausal women with bleeding, persistent leukorrhea, and pyometra. So what are the laboratory evidences available? That is complete blood picture, erythrocyte segmentation rate, chest X-ray, imaging studies are ultrasonography, histosalpingography, and laparoscopy, and histopathological examination of the specimen could be done. Microbiological tests available are Montus test, acid fast bacillus staining and culture, that is endometrium and urine, QTC test and serology, molecular test and HIV. So complete blood count. And complete blood count, there might be anemia because of malnourished state, and there will be low hemoglobin. And as we know, lymphocytosis can occur. Increase, that is more than 30% of the lymphocytes might be present. ASR is elevated and it might be normal. On urine microscopy, there is abacteriuric pyuria. That is, pus cells are increased in urine on a urine examination, but we cannot find any bacteria because it is not excreted in urine. And CA125 is elevated. CA125 is elevated because any epithelial surface which is affected, CA125 will be raised, but it is not raised as to the level that of in CS cervix. On chest X-ray might be normal or in primary genital tuberculosis, or it may show old healed scar lesions, or miliary tuberculosis may be seen in, tubercles may be seen in disseminated tuberculosis. As we can see here, old scar lesion is present. On histopathological examination, as you know, histopathology shows a similar picture as caseous granuloma. So the specimen for his HPE is endometrial biopsy. Endometrial biopsy could be taken and HPE should be done. Endometrial biopsy is taken from endometrial aspiration, which can be done in OP or dilatation and curetage, or menstrual blood within first 12 hours of menstruation. This is done in unmarried women. So first 12 hours where contamination is less. And Kistner method is, we give progesterone and we create a pseudo pregnancy state in the woman, and we will do dilatation and curettage, and we will obtain the specimen. This is done in women in where there is atrophic endometrium, where the endometrium is continuously shed, and there is thin line of endometrium, and there is no endometrium to send for histopathological examination. Kistner method is done. So endometrial curetting is obtained, and half of it is preserved in formalin for histopathological examination, and half of it is preserved in saline for smear examination. That is, we will do staining with acid fast bacilli, or we will do ornament rhodamine stain, or we can send the culture. We can send that HPE that is stored in saline for culture or for guinea pig inoculation. So findings on histopathological examination are granulation, caseation, central caseation, fibrosis, and there might be dilated glands and inflammatory cells, and that is lymphocytes and plasma cells might be present, and there is destruction of the epithelium. So microscopic examination of the granuloma may show multinucleated giant cells, Langerhans cells, epithelioid cells, and central areas of caseation. And it is positive in 50 to 60% of female genital tuberculosis. That is, sensitivity is very less. So negative for HB. If HB does not show female genital tuberculosis, it doesn't mean that patient is not suffering from TB. So it is 100% specificity. On smear microscopy, two types of staining is done. That is, Jean-Nielsen staining is also called as acid-fast staining, or direct fluorescence is done by Orman-Rodeman staining. This is simple and rapid procedure. There is higher sensitivity and faster screening than acid-fast staining. So the amount of bacteria required for smear to be positive is 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power of 6 bacteria for high power field for positive smear. So smear specimens are not just sputum, but also our endometrial biopsy. Culture. There are two cultures available. Conventional culture, as we know, Lowenstein Jensen medium. It is egg-based medium. It takes 3 to 8 weeks for the result to be positive. For the culture to be told negative, we should wait for at least 8 weeks. So to tell the patient is negative, we have to wait for at least 8 weeks. That is a long duration. In radiometric test, that is BACTEC medium, it is agar based medium. It takes hardly 10 to 14 days, that is 1 to 2 weeks for the results to be positive. For it to be told negative, it takes at least 4 weeks. At least for 4 weeks, it must be negative. Only then the culture is negative. BACTEC is radiometric culture test. It is based on carbon dioxide released by the bacteria during growth in liquid medium. Diagnosis is made in 1 to 2 weeks and sensitivity is 80 to 90%. BACTEC LN 3D MB test. It is fully automated, non-invasive, continuously monitored radiometric test. It detects carbon dioxide released by the bacteria. Specimen is decontaminated clinical specimen and sterile body fluid. Montus test, as we know, it is tuberculin skin test. 0.1 ml of the purified protein derivative is given intradermally, and it is observed after 48 to 72 hours. This is a delayed hypersensitivity reaction, and the patch is studied after 48 to 72 hours, based on which results are given. So similar to this test is quantiferon gold TB test, QFTB test. This is an in vitro test that is called QGT test, that is quantiferon gold test, as we have seen in clinical investigations. It is an in vitro test. Stimulation is done, we will stimulate the patient with the Mycobacterium tuberculosis antigen, and we will measure interferon gamma released by the sensitized T cells. But it cannot differentiate between active and latent tuberculosis. So what are the advantages of quantiferon TB gold test over our Montus test? That is, there is single patient visit, and rapid results will be given. That is, it takes 12 hours. It is more specific than Montus test, and no booster response as is observed if we give BCG vaccination, or we will do Montus test the second time. It gives a booster response, that is, it may give false positive results. There are no reader bias, and it is not affected by BCG vaccination or improved or altered immune function. That is, Montus test is a delayed hypersensitivity test. It is affected by immunocompromised state, but this is not affected. T-spot is an improved type of QFTB test. It counts the cells releasing interferon gamma, whereas quantiferon TB gold test counts the interferon gamma release, whereas T-spot test counts the cells releasing interferon gamma. It detects active and latent pulmonary and extragenital tuberculosis, and it is used to screen tuberculosis. Gene Expert, it is the most sensitive and the specific test as of now available. It is a catalyst based on nucleic acid amplification test. It detects simultaneously both Mycobacterium tuberculosis DNA, that is MTB, and resistance to rifampicin, IFP. So drug sensitivity and the organism could be detected simultaneously, and it is a very rapid test. It takes less than 2 hours. sensitivity is low, that is 88%, and specificity is 98%. When expert MTB or RIF is negative, disease can be ruled out unless there is a strong suspicion of genital tuberculosis. So this is now being recommended by the WHO since it is very rapid test. So what are the imaging methods available? On ultrasonography of the abdomen and pelvis, we can see loculated ascites, that is spiny strands or particulate matter may be present due to fibrin strands. There might be bilateral or unilateral tubo-ovarian mass. Hydrosalpinx might be present. Fluid in the pouch of Douglas or peritoneal cavity. Because of extravasation, that is caseation, might be present. Mesenteric lymphadenopathy and calcification of the lymph nodes might be present. Uterus might be shrunken due to atrophic endometrium or might be enlarged because of pyometra. So on ultrasonography, we will see for ascites, tubo-ovarian mass, hydrosalpinx, and the uterus may be shrunken or atrophic. There might be mesenteric lymph nodes or fluid in pouch of Douglas and peritoneal cavity. On CT and MRA and positron emission tomography, it is done for peritoneal tuberculosis and tubo-ovarian masses. There might be regular pattern of small nodulitis along the peritoneum. On hysterosalpingography, this is the most specific test available as of now, most specific imaging test. It is contraindicated in acute pelvic infection and if tuberculosis is suspected, because we injected dye from the into the endometrial cavity, which is filled through the femoral fimbria. There might be spread of the disease from the female genital tract into the abdominal cavity, that is pelvic tuberculosis becomes abdominal tuberculosis. So in acute pelvic infection and also in tuberculosis is suspected, this should not be done. So what are the findings on hysterosalpingography? There might be vascular or lymphatic extravasation of the dye, because the endometrium and the myometrial layers are damaged. There might be damage to the blood vessels and the lymphatics, whereby our dye might be extravasated through the vascular and lymphatic spread. Rigid lead pipe tubes with nodulations might be present. Tobacco pouch appearance, which could be seen both on laparoscopy and in our hysterosalpingography. There might be leopard skin appearance or rosette appearance or moth-eaten appearance or sperm head or golf club appearance. There might be beaded appearance of the tube or distal tubal obstruction may occur. Coiling or calcified shadows may occur. There might be bilateral corneal block might be present. Honeycomb appearance of the uterine cavity might be present, because there are dense adhesions within the uterine cavity. There might be filling defects, filling defects in the dye will be present. So it may give honeycomb appearance. So these are the few types of appearances which could be seen. This is tobacco pouch appearance. Tobacco pouch appearance, here the ampulla of the fallopian tube is affected and the fimbria are indrawn. They can't be visualized upon hysterosalpingography. So isthmus is narrow. It gives like the tube is enlarged with indrawn fimbria. Tube is enlarged and the distended ostium remains patent with recognizable everted fimbria. Fimbria are everted or drawn inside. It looks similar to a tobacco pouch. There might be cotton wool plug appearance. That is focal irregularity and areas of calcification occur within the lumen of the fallopian tube. Because the fallopian tubes are affected by tuberculosis, the muscle layer, mucosa and the muscle layer might be affected, which gives irregular dissemination of the dye. And there might be flask-shaped appearance because of dilatation of the fallopian tube due to obstruction by the obstruction at the fimbria. And T-shaped uterine cavity. T-shaped uterine cavity occurs because of irregular scarring and thickening of the uterine cavity might occur, and the uterine cavity is very much reduced and it gives T-shaped appearance. Scarring results in T-shaped uterine cavity with intravasation of the contrast. So pipe stem appearance, this is not our pipe stem. Pipe stem is like tobacco pipe stem appearance will be present. That is scarring, because of scarring of the fallopian tube, there is irregular and rigid, and filling defect in the uterine cavity here we can see filling defect within the uterine cavity because of dense adhesions. So if multiple filling defects are present within the uterine cavity, it gives an honeycomb appearance. So this is our pipe stem appearance, and this is the filling defect which could be seen. So pipe stem appearance or rigid pipe appearance is present in genital tuberculosis. This is beaded appearance. Beaded appearance is because of multiple constrictions along the course of the fallopian tube on HSV. It may give fibrotic strictures might be present, which gives beaded appearance. Because of patchy salpingitis might be present, where scarring might be present. In other areas, normal fallopian tube might be present. So it gives beaded appearance. Segmental thickening might be present. So tufted appearance. Tufted appearance is caseous ulceration of the mucosa of the fallopian tube, produce an irregular contour of the lumen of the tubes. And diverticular cavities may surround the ampulla and give a tuft-like appearance. Diverticular cavities might be present around the ampulla, and they give tufted appearance. And this is our hydrosalpinx. This is sperm head appearance or golf club appearance. Here, this is our uterine. This is the uterine cavity. This is cervix, and here are the ostia, corneal ostia towards cornea, corneal ostia. So here it is very rounded and very thin and narrowed because of thickening, because of because of myometrial thickening and fibrosis. They appear like golf club appearance. They appear like golf club. So on hysteroscopy, in hysteroscopy, what we do is we will examine the endometrial cavity under microscope or under camera. So ostia are not visualized. This is what we call as golf club appearance. Ostia are not visualized, and caseous material is filled into the uterine cavity through these ostia from the fallopian tubes. There might be big periosteal fibrosis whereby ostia are narrowed, and caseation and tubercles may be seen within the uterine cavity. There might be endometrial calcification. After caseation, calcification occurs. So endometrial calcification may occur, and there is scanty endometrium. And these are intrauterine adhesions. If there are thick adhesions, it may lead to Asherman syndrome. There are 4 grades of adhesions you have to learn. And there might be irregular uterine cavity. Laparoscopy. On laparoscopic examination, blue uterus will be seen. Blue uterus is like in chromoperturbation, we will inject methylene blue dye into the uterine cavity, and we will laparoscopy means we will observe it from upwards, that is from the upwards from abdomen. So this methylene blue within the uterine cavity appears makes the uterus look like blue uterus because the uterine wall is very thinned out because of the disease. So blue uterus might be present, and dye dripping will be present. Dye dripping is like our fallopian tubes are not very functional, and there is no free flow of the fluid to the fallopian tube. So when we inject methylene blue dye into the uterine cavity, it will dip very slowly through the fallopian tubes from the fimbrial opening. So dye dripping may be present. So other findings are in subacute or acute phase, there might be red swollen edematous fallopian tubes, that is acute salpingitis, and tiny tubercles with yellow and opaque plaques on the surface might be seen, that is on the surface of fallopian tubes and ovaries. In chronic salpingitis, there are nodular and patchy salpingitis, hydrosalpinx, pyosalpinx, and omental adhesions and frozen pelvis may be present. So tobacco pouch appearance is seen in laparoscopy and hysterosalpingography. Unilateral bilateral tubo-ovarian mass because of purulent secondary infections, or caseation, there might be TO mass, and cases exudate may be present in pouch of Douglas. And we can, on laparoscopy, this is not just diagnostic, we can it is for diagnosis, and fimbrial biopsy and peritoneal fluid may be taken for examination, that is histopathological examination or culture or smear. So here, as we know, violin string appearance is from the fallopian tubes till the liver, that is right side of right fallopian tube. right upper quadrant showing dense adhesions of the liver to the anterior abdominal wall. So these are very long string-like adhesions present. This is called as Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome. This is also seen in chlamydia trachomatis infection. On laparoscopy, we can see tiny tubercles present all over the fallopian tube and the uterine cavity. This is a uterus, all over the surface of the uterus and the fallopian tube, and also on the peritoneum. So with treatment, these tubercles usually subside and adhesions are also mostly released. Serological tests. What are the serological tests? ELISA, that is enzymatic immunosorbent assay. It tests antibodies against mycobacterial antigen. It is useful in chronic and inaccessible disease. In active infection, IgM develops before all other tests. We can detect early detection. It could be done by ELISA, and sensitivity is 80 to 90% in extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So for early detection, ELISA is useful. PCR molecular diagnostic test. PCR can be used to detect both RNA and DNA of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So DNA testing, amplification of DNA using specific primers could be done. Sensitivity is more than 90% and specificity is more than 95%. And it detects even 1 to 10% of 10 organisms per ml, whereas our smears can detect only 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 6 ml organisms per ml. So it is more sensitive than smear examination. It can be applied to sterile fluids like peritoneal fluid where culture is difficult due to low bacterial load. Results are available in 2 to 3 days. So the most rapid test so far we know is GeneXpert, that is results occur in less than 2 hours, and in quantifier and gold test results occur in less than 12 hours. In MONDIS test it takes 48 to 72 hours. In PCR it takes 2 to 3 days. But the disadvantages are it is cumbersome and expensive, and it can't distinguish between dead and live organisms. DNA could be present in both live and dead organisms, so we can't differentiate between active and latent infection. And so we can't monitor our treatment because we don't know whether the disease is progressing or not. Either in latent or active phase, it becomes positive. So PCR DNA RNA detection by improved PCR, it detects only live bacteria and there are no false positives, and it could be used to monitor the treatment. So what are biochemical markers available? Adenosine ADA, adenosine deaminase activity test. It is tested in associated peritoneal tuberculosis. If levels are more than 30 units per liter in ascitic fluid, it is significant. Tubercle steric test, that is, we will test for fatty acids present on surface of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. To test for fatty acids present on Mycobacterium, gas chromatography or mass spectrometry done with samples containing small number of bacteria. So this is the chart representing the investigations to be done to diagnose tuberculosis. If there is any suspicion of female genital tuberculosis, that is, if there is any clinical suspicion from history or any clinical features, that is like unexplained infertility or menstrual irregularities or PID not responding to treatment and postmenopausal bleeding or persistent foul smelling white discharge, we have to investigate further to rule out any systemic tuberculosis. That is by lab investigations and chest X-ray and tuberculin skin test. Chest X-ray, CBC, ESR, and tuberculin skin test and Montus test. And imaging. Imaging, what we do is ultrasonography and hysterosalpingography. We can also do hysteroscopy. And laparoscopic examination. We will take biopsy and we will do histopathological examination, or we will do smear. Bacteriological confirmation, that is from acid fast bacillus smear or AFB culture in liquid or solid media, that is BACTEC, or in our LJ medium, or molecular methods, that is nucleic acid amplification testing or PCR, or we can also do guinea pig inoculation. Also, what is treatment of tuberculosis? What are the principles of management? Principles of management are the regimen should contain multiple drugs. So single drug therapy should not be given because drug resistance develops to multiple drugs to which organism is susceptible. Drugs to be taken regularly, and drugs should be continued for sufficient period of time. For sufficient period of time. What are the keystones in management? What are the keystones? That is sound understanding of the disease, and there must be proper evaluation of the disease. Careful planning of treatment should be done. Help of specialists should be, other specialists like pulmonary medicine and general medicine should be taken, and counseling and reassurance of the patient should be done. Dietary modification, that is patient should be advised good nutritious diet and high protein diet, and advise long term follow up, and the ophthalmic examination to be done because ethambular side effect because ethambular causes ophthalmic toxicity. Treatment of female genital tuberculosis is similar to pulmonary tuberculosis. So what are the drugs available and what are the side effects? Drugs are isoniazid, it causes hepatitis and peripheral neuropathy. Rifampicin, it causes hepatitis, flu-like syndrome, interstitial nephritis, thrombocytopenia. Streptomycin, it causes deafness, renal failure, vestibulopathy. Pyrazinamide, it causes hepatitis and hyperuricemia. Ethambutol, it causes optic neuritis. Salicylic acid, it causes diarrhea, hepatitis, hypersensitivity reactions. Ethionamide causes hepatitis. Cycloserine causes depression, personality changes, psychosis, and seizures. Thiazidone is exfoliative dermatitis or hepatitis. Kanamycin, it causes deafness, renal failure, vestibulopathy. So the drug, what we say, the doses here present, these were followed initially previously. Now we follow fixed dose combination regimen, and which depends upon the weight, that is weight band. So for particular weight, one tablet is given. For another weight, two tablets is given. So what is the basic protocol we follow? Intensive phase and maintenance phase, also called as continuation phase. In intensive phase, we will give multiple drugs, that is 3 to 4 drugs for 2 to 4 months, and in maintenance phase, we will give 2 drugs for 5 to 12 months, and change of the drug should be done according to the response, severity, toxicity, and sensitivity reports. So what are the types of TB? New and previously treated tuberculosis. New tuberculosis, in intensive phase we will give HRZD, and in continuation phase we will give HRE. So in continuation phase of both these categories, ethambutol is included. So in previously treated cases, we'll give 2 HRZDs and 1 HRZD, and for 5 months HRE has to be given. The protocol has been changed by RNTCP in 2016. So the recent guidelines are, the new guidelines are, we have to give daily regimen. So now DOTS is not being used. DOTS is directly observed treatment strategy is not being used. So we have to give daily regimen. So the patient is advised to take tablets every day, not 2 times or 3 times a week. So daily regimen should be given, and ethambutol should be given in continuation phase of both categories 1 and 2. And fixed dose combination as per weight band has to be given. Weight band means range of weight range, that is 25 to 34 or so, and if 1 tablet or 2 tablets should be given, and there is no need to extend the initiation in intensive phase. And long-term follow-up up to 2 years. Long-term follow-up has to be done for up to 2 years. Previous guidelines are intermittent. Previous guidelines were intermittent regimen should be given, that is every twice or thrice a week. Ethambutol in continuation phase of category 2 only. There is no fixed dose regimen, and limited weight band is given. Extension of intensive phase for 1 month if sputum is positive at the end of initiation phase. Laboratory follow-up is by laboratory. Here follow-up is by both clinical and laboratory. No long-term follow-up has to be given. No long-term follow-up was done earlier. So here we give clinical follow-up and long-term follow-up for 2 years, and here no long-term follow-up is given. These are the weight bands. What we have discussed, these are the weight bands. These are the drugs available, and we have seen duration. So these are number of tablets. So this is the combination of drug combinations are available. In one tablet there will be HRJD. HRE is given in continuation phase. So two tablets are given if the weight is 25 to 39 kg. If three tablets are given if it weight is 40 to 54 kg, and 55 to 69 kg, four tablets are given. More than or equal to 70 kg, five tablets are given. So in drug-resistant tuberculosis, the management is similar to that of pulmonary tuberculosis. So usually the result of monotherapy, usually drug-resistant tuberculosis is usually result of monotherapy or negligence of the patient, and resistance to isoniazid and rifampicin is the most common. And the chosen regimen must include a mixture of essential and second-line drugs. So what are the essential anti-tuberculosis drugs? That is streptomycin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, and thiazidazole. So treatment of chronic cases, that is drug resistant and MDR tuberculosis, is same as that of pulmonary tuberculosis. So what is the monitoring we have to do? That is counseling of the patient and good and nutritious diet, and report for any side effects. Treatment in HIV positive patients is what are the possible options? So because of increased prevalence of HIV, there is immunocompromised state, and there are increased chance of tuberculosis infection, co-infection. So what are the possible options for a patient with both tuberculosis and HIV? We have to defer, that is delay the treatment of anti-ART till tuberculosis treatment is completed, or till initial phase is completed, and use isoniazid and ethambutol both in continuation phase. Or treatment of TB with rifampicin containing regimen, and use efavirenz plus 2 NRTI to treat HIV. Or rifampicin containing regimen plus 2 NRTIs, and then change to heart after completion of tuberculosis treatment. So what are the complications of sequelae? Subfertility, that is decreased fertility. This is because of irreversible damage caused to the endometrium and the fallopian tube. In fallopian tube, the cilia are affected. So if there is early diagnosis and treatment, fertility is reversible. But if the treatment and diagnosis is delayed, severe damage occurs to the fallopian tube, which results in subfertility or infertility. There might be implantation failure on the endometrium because of decreased endometrial receptivity, adhesions, atrophy, and fibrosis. Ectopic pregnancy, congenital tuberculosis might occur. Ectopic pregnancy because the cilia of the fallopian tube have altered motility. So what is the role of steroids in combination with anti-tuberculosis treatment? 50. So role of steroids is to prevent damage to the fallopian tube. So we may give 50 milligrams of cortisone or 5 milligrams of prednisolone daily in conjunction with ADT for 3 to 4 months, particularly to preserve the function of the tubes. And what is the treatment of occluded tubes? Usually tubal damage is irreversible. So transuterine insufflation with 50 to 100 milligrams of hydrocortisone. It is a steroid. It may release the intrafallopian tube adhesions, and we may give streptomycin. So what is the surgical management? Surgical management based on Schaffer and Sutherland criteria for surgical intervention are persistence of adnexal mass after 4 to 6 months of antibiotic therapy. We have to suspect presence of any concomitant neoplasia of the genital tract. So we have to do surgery. Or if there is any persistent pelvic pain, or primary unresponsiveness to anti-tuberculosis treatment, or difficulty in obtaining patient cooperation for long-term therapy. So what are the indications for tubal reconstructive surgery? It is usually contraindicated because irreparable damage occurs to the tubes, that is cilia are affected. It may result in reactivation and dissemination of the disease. So medical management of infertility followed by in vitro fertilization may be done. That is usually fallopian tubes are non-functional. So we have to retrieve the ova, and we have to do in vitro fertilization. In partially occluded tubes, tubal cannulation may be done. In uterine sanicae, histoscopic adhesiolysis could be done. So chemotherapy should be precede surgery by 1 to 2 weeks. That is, ADT should be given 1 to 2 weeks prior to surgery. Surgery should be done in mid-cycle or in premenopausal women. So, what is the treatment outcome of female genital tuberculosis? Tuberculosis, as we have seen, tubercles which are present upon fallopian tubes and uterus, they will be dissolved, and caseous tubercles and ancestral ascites will usually disappear, but the adhesions may persist and the tumor damage exists. So what is the supportive management? We have to do general health improvement and high protein diet, that is good diet, and hematinics and vitamins should be given. Environmental improvement, psychological support, and family counseling should be done. How could we prevent this disease? The aim is to decrease the overall incidence of TB-MT screening, and BCG vaccination should be given. Detection of TB in mothers, in pregnant women, and treatment to prevent congenital tuberculosis. Routine health checkup in schools and community should be done. Suspected cases of multiple drug resistant X-ray should be done. In suspected cases, X-ray test can be done. Early diagnosis, that is early diagnosis and timely treatment should be done. And we have to prevent a HIV infection. So thank you. Ended this. Well, questions.